Africa is undergoing a profound shift in its global relationships. For decades, the United States and Europe have been Africa's primary partners. However, China's influence has grown rapidly in recent years. This shift is reshaping the continent's economic, political, and social landscape. It is a trend with significant implications for the future of Africa and the world. Africa's growing preference for China is evident in the increasing trade, investment, and infrastructure projects across the continent. Chinese companies are building roads, railways, ports, and telecommunications networks. These projects are vital for Africa's economic development. They improve connectivity, facilitate trade, and create jobs. China's engagement is seen by many as a sign of its commitment to Africa's progress. However, this shift is not without its critics. Some argue that China's involvement is primarily driven by self-interest. They point to the extraction of resources, the influx of Chinese labor, and the potential for debt traps. There are concerns about environmental sustainability and labor standards. Critics also question China's human rights record and its political influence in Africa. Despite these concerns, there is no doubt that China's presence in Africa is having a transformative effect. It is providing much-needed infrastructure, creating economic opportunities, and challenging traditional power dynamics. As Africa continues to rise, its relationship with China will be one of the most important global partnerships to watch in the coming decades. To understand Africa's pivot towards China, it's crucial to examine the historical context of its relationships with the West. For centuries, Africa has endured a complex and often exploitative relationship with Europe and the United States. Colonization left a legacy of economic dependence and political instability. Post-colonial relations were often marked by Cold War rivalries and conditional aid programs. Western engagement with Africa has often been criticized for its paternalistic approach. It has been accused of prioritizing political agendas over genuine development needs. Aid programs have sometimes come with strings attached, requiring countries to adopt certain policies or align with specific ideologies. This history has created a sense of resentment and distrust among many Africans. In contrast, China presents itself as a partner that respects Africa's sovereignty and does not interfere in its internal affairs. China's own history of colonialism and exploitation resonates with many African leaders. They see China's rise as a model for their own development aspirations. China's non-interference policy is seen as a refreshing change from the West's perceived meddling. This historical context provides a foundation for understanding why Africa is increasingly receptive to China's overtures. China's approach, while not without its own complexities, offers a different model of engagement. It appeals to African leaders seeking alternative pathways to development and a more equitable global order. One of the most visible manifestations of China's growing influence in Africa is its massive investment in infrastructure. Chinese companies are involved in a wide range of projects across the continent. These include roads, railways, ports, airports, dams, power plants, and telecommunications networks. These projects are addressing critical infrastructure gaps that have hindered Africa's economic progress for decades. The scale and speed of China's infrastructure development in Africa are unprecedented. The Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, FOCAC, has become a key platform for coordinating these efforts. China has pledged billions of dollars in loans and grants to support African infrastructure projects. Chinese companies have gained a reputation for their efficiency and cost-effectiveness. One notable example is the Addis Ababa-Djibouti Railway. This modern railway line connects landlocked Ethiopia to the port of Djibouti, providing a vital trade route. Another example is the Mombasa-Nairobi Standard Gauge Railway in Kenya. This railway significantly reduces travel time and transportation costs, boosting trade and tourism. These projects are transforming Africa's economic landscape, facilitating trade and connecting people and markets. China's infrastructure investments are not without controversy. Concerns have been raised about debt sustainability, environmental impact, and the use of Chinese labor. However, there is no doubt that these projects are contributing to Africa's economic growth and modernization. They are also enhancing China's strategic influence in the region. A key factor in Africa's growing preference for China is its non-interference policy. Unlike Western nations, China does not impose conditions on its aid or investments based on political reforms or human rights records. This approach resonates with African leaders who are wary of Western interventionism and conditionalities. China's non-interference policy is seen as a sign of respect for African sovereignty. It allows African countries to choose their own development paths without external pressure. This stands in contrast to the West's tendency to lecture African countries on governance and human rights. China's approach is perceived as more pragmatic and less judgmental. However, China's non-interference policy is not without its critics. Some argue that it enables authoritarian regimes and undermines efforts to promote democracy and human rights in Africa. They point to China's close ties with governments accused of corruption and human rights abuses. There are concerns that China's focus on economic interests may come at the expense of good governance and accountability. Despite these criticisms, China's non-interference policy remains a major draw for many African leaders. It offers a different model of engagement that prioritizes economic cooperation and mutual respect. This approach is seen as more aligned with Africa's development priorities and its desire for greater autonomy on the global stage. Beyond economic and political ties, China is also actively building cultural bridges with Africa. China is promoting cultural exchanges, language learning, and educational opportunities. These initiatives are aimed at fostering deeper understanding and goodwill between the two regions. They also represent a form of soft power diplomacy. China has established Confucius Institutes in many African countries. These institutes offer Chinese language courses and cultural programs. They promote Chinese culture and values to African audiences. China is also offering scholarships to African students to study in China. These educational exchanges are creating a new generation of Africans with first-hand experience of China. China's soft power initiatives are having a noticeable impact on Africa's youth. Many young Africans are eager to learn Chinese, study in China, and explore business opportunities with Chinese companies. They see China as a rising power and a source of inspiration for Africa's own development. These cultural exchanges are fostering a sense of familiarity and affinity between China and Africa. They are creating a foundation for long-term cooperation and partnership. As China's global influence grows, its soft power initiatives will play an increasingly important role in shaping perceptions and building relationships with African societies. Africa's pivot towards China reflects a complex interplay of factors. On the one hand, China's economic engagement offers a compelling alternative to traditional Western partners. China's infrastructure investments are addressing critical development needs. Its non-interference policy is appealing to leaders seeking greater autonomy. Its cultural initiatives are fostering connections with African societies. On the other hand, China's growing influence in Africa is not without its anxieties. Concerns persist about debt sustainability, environmental impact, and the potential for neo-colonialism. China's human rights record and its political influence in Africa are also subjects of debate. The long-term implications of this shift for Africa's development trajectory remain to be seen. Africa's choice to engage more deeply with China reflects its desire for a more equitable global order. It is a sign of Africa's growing agency and its determination to chart its own course. As China's global power continues to expand, its relationship with Africa will be one of the defining partnerships of the 21st century. It is a partnership with the potential to reshape the global landscape and influence the future of both continents. The future of Africa's relationship with China will depend on how effectively both sides manage the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. Transparency, accountability, and mutual respect will be essential for a sustainable and mutually beneficial partnership. The world will be watching closely as this pivotal relationship continues to evolve.